We're now starting our second set of notes, which are our macromolecule notes. Please find this worksheet within your packet and get ready to fill it out as we go through our notes. Make sure you give yourself enough time to get all of the information because you're going to need this information to complete a quiz at the end of this presentation. So we're going to begin this conversation by identifying the idea of organic compounds. Organic compounds are carbon-based compounds that contain carbon-hydrogen bonds and can also include sulfur. We also have inorganic compounds, and they are not carbon-based. For example, salt. Salt has sodium and chlorine. Neither of those are carbon, which makes it an inorganic compound. But all living things contain organic compounds. All organic compounds can be broken into 4 different categories: carbohydrates, lipids, protein, and nucleic acids. Organic compounds are also known as macromolecules. Macro means big, so these are the bigger molecules within our foods. Our first macromolecule is carbohydrates. Carbo, carbon, hydro, hydrogen, 8, oxygen. The monomer, or building block of a carbohydrate, is monosaccharide. So what that means is that carbohydrates, our large molecule, is made up of a bunch of monomers, or tiny molecules, called monosaccharides. The carbohydrate is a specific type of organic compound that is composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. In the box, can you please copy down this diagram with the blue arrows? Because it's important to know that it's 1 part carbon for every 2 parts hydrogen for every 1 part oxygen. An example of this is glucose, and glucose is a type of carbohydrate, and its molecular formula is C6H12O6. And so you see that there are 6 to 12 to 6, or 1 to 2 to 1. The ratio of the carbons to the hydrogens and the oxygens are the same. The next macromolecule we're going to talk about are lipids. Lipids are insoluble organic compounds that are made up of fatty acids. The monomer, or building block, of a lipid is a fatty acid. They are hydrophobic, which means they don't dissolve in water, because hydro means water and phobic means fear. An example of the hydrophobic properties of lipids is when you pour oil into water and they do not mix. There are 4 different types of lipids you need to know for this class. The first are fats and oils, and this is energy, storage, insulation, and protection. So these are the fats and oils that we can eat. We then have waxes that are usually meant to cover or protect, so we put wax on our lips when they get chapped, or we have wax in our ears to protect our eardrum. We have phospholipids, and this is an important structural component of our cell membrane. It protects and allows different things in and out of our cells based on the lipid properties. And then our last one is steroids, like cholesterol and sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone. These are all composed of lipids. Lipids are fats, and there are 2 different types of fats. There are saturated and unsaturated. Saturated fats have a single bond and are solid at room temperature. So an example of a saturated fat is butter. Even if you leave butter on the counter, it doesn't melt into a liquid. It is able to maintain its structure, and that's because of the rigid structure you see on the screen. We then have unsaturated fats, and that means that they have double bonds and kinks, and the easiest way to tell if something is an unsaturated fat is that it is a liquid at room temperature. For example, olive oil. So we have butter that contains single bonds, and olive oil that contains double bonds, and a lot less saturation. And so the reason saturated fats are so much worse for you is because they don't have the ability to easily move through our arteries, and they get stuck, causing clogs and problems like heart attacks. Our next macromolecule is proteins, and the building block of a protein is an amino acid. Amino acids form many different types of structures and are mainly building blocks for living tissues. And protein structure is complex. It has a primary, secondary, and tertiary structure, and those tertiary structures then build into quaternary structures. Primary means a single strand of amino acids that then goes into a secondary, which has characteristics of the protein strand, so how it bonds and bends. We then have the tertiary structure where it becomes 3D, And then we have the quaternary structure, once again where multiple tertiary structures come together to form a larger protein. Our last macromolecule are nucleic acids, and nucleic acids contain genetic information and store energy. The two major forms of nucleic acid are DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, ribonucleic acid. And the building block of this nucleic acid, or the monomer, is a nucleotide. Each nucleotide consists of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. This concludes this section of notes. Please make sure to get all of the blanks filled in so that you are ready for the quiz. Once you've completed the quiz, please move on to our next set of notes. Thank you!